Danny supposedly has little to worry about, but if she ain't careful, she'll push her boyfriend away in Home and Away at 12:30. First of all, here's Rob Butler with the 5 News at noon.
This lunchtime on 5 News, a top American firm confesses to a multi-billion-dollar scandal. Share prices plummet worldwide. Ken Livingstone fights for his political life over allegations of a boozy party bust-up. And jail for the Manchester vicar who kept an antique gun. Hello. Share prices in London plunged this morning as news broke of yet another huge financial scandal in America. This time it's a big telecoms firm where billions of dollars were wrongly accounted for. The stock value of household names here nosedived, reducing still further the worth of pension funds and endowments. Ben Scotchbrook reports.
The problem started over there when the American communications giant WorldCom announced it had a small confession to make. An internal investigation had uncovered an accounting irregularity amounting to a $3.8 billion shortfall. Seen as one of the largest ever accountancy improprieties, it appears to be a case of boosting published profits by making company debts appear a lot smaller than they are. One director has already been sacked, while another has resigned, but the shockwaves have been felt way beyond WorldCom. On the other side of the world, the financial scandal has seen billions wiped off company values. The Tokyo Stock Exchange the first to head downwards, but European markets have also plummeted. London Stock Exchange approaching its post-September the 11th lows. Following so soon after the Enron scandal, today's revelation deals another blow to confidence in US accounting practices. And, as with Enron, the accounting firm employed by WorldCom, Arthur Andersen. But this really is about more than this or that company over there. World markets are in a spin today, and the impact is already being felt over here. Ben Scotchbrook, 5 News.
I'm joined now from Barclays by financial expert Ian Hodges. Ian, can you explain first, in layman's terms, exactly what it is that WorldCom did wrong?
Yes, well, WorldCom are a highly borrowed company and they owe their bankers billions of pounds. And what they've been trying to do is keep their bankers happy by inflating their profits and essentially showing in their profit and loss account, or not showing in their profit and loss account, expenses which they've attributed elsewhere in their accounts and thereby inflating the reported profits. That's kept their bankers happy up until now, who have then continued to lend them more money.
So very simply, they were saying that money they were spending today could actually be taken account of over a long period of time. For instance, if they were laying down big telecom cables that you could fairly say would last 3 or 4 years, that's fair to be in the capital account. But if they were repairing them, you have to account for that now. They weren't doing it. They were also saying that could last 3 or 4 years. That made it look like they were spending less money. That made it look like they were making bigger profits.
That's quite right, and profitability is a key measure for the bankers to assess the financial strength of any company. If WorldCom had not done this, then the bankers would have wanted to charge WorldCom more interest, or indeed called in the loans, or indeed not agreed to lend them any more money. Any 3 of those would have had serious implications for WorldCom, so basically they were protecting their own position by inflating their own profits.
It's understandable that the value of other telecommunication companies' shares would fall today, but why are 99 out of the top 100 shares in Britain lower? The likes of Tesco, the Daily Mail and BP, what's the link there?
Well, you can understand certainly the banks and the insurers who also have exposure to the debt from WorldCom, but elsewhere the effect really is more bad news for the market, concerns over accounting generally, and really coming at a time when markets are suffering from the fact that the recovery in the economy is not coming through. It's being deferred further and further out, and this is really just weighing on that already poor outlook.
Ian Hodges, thank you. One of Britain's most colourful politicians, Ken Livingstone, has been fighting for his career this morning amid claims that he lied to the London Assembly. It follows allegations that he pushed a man over a wall after a party in London. Today, the mayor gave his side of the story. Let's go to our political editor, Andy Bell. Andy, this is a pretty complicated sequence of events he's had to account for. What exactly did he say?
Well, this goes back to a party that happened last May, and essentially today, again, Ken Livingstone has denied the three central allegations. One, that he assaulted his girlfriend, who is pregnant. The other, that he assaulted another man at the party. And the third, that he left the scene of the party before the emergency services and the police arrived. He denied all that again, as he did last week. But we have heard more about that party than we heard before. For instance, he did say today that there had been a scuffle between himself and Robin Hedges before the incident where Mr. Hedges fell over this wall. Now, Ken Livingstone then was describing the scene after that scuffle. He said that Ken Livingstone, returned to the house, but he was aware of the man with whom he'd had the scuffle, Robin Hedges.
These men are digging for mice to eat.
How many now? How many now?
It may seem odd, even repellent, but it's all they have. They can also sell their mice as a cash crop at 14 to the pound. Things are more desperate here than I had imagined. Starvation is already taking its toll, but add to that those already weakened by AIDS. 1 in 7 here carries the AIDS virus. There's one business thriving in this country, and that's coffin making. And here's a statistic to shake you. So many deaths, so many young people dying. 1/4 of the educational budget is spent on teachers' funerals. Another village and another ordeal. This time, 6 orphans and a blind grandmother. The father died of AIDS and the mother more recently of starvation. We traced the eldest daughter, just 15. She'd given up school and taken a job as a sweeper in a tobacco mill. The £8 a month she earns keeps the whole family alive, but only just. Desperate times. How many deaths have there been around here? Our final stop, a community where more than 20 people have already died of starvation and illness worsened by malnutrition. In my UNICEF capacity, I am invited to observe a funeral and to see what these people are living and dying through on a daily basis. A village elder praises the dead man who died of starvation. He was 45 and known for helping others. What is the message that you want to get to the world?
Yes, please, when you go back to UK, tell people that Malawians are dying of hunger. So this is the message that we should take to UK.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So many funerals, so many lives cut short. How many more depends on those a world away who have the means to help. Whether or not we have the will is another matter. Martin Bell, Malawi, for 5 News.
With me now is David Bull, the Executive Director of UNICEF, the children's charity which Martin Bell travelled with to Malawi. The pictures are shocking, frankly, even to those of us who are used to seeing famines in Africa.
Yes, there are children now who are hungry and dying in hospitals and in villages in Malawi, and not only in Malawi, but in other neighbouring countries of southern Africa. And the situation is only going to get worse from here on.
Nearly 20 years after Ethiopia, is this a natural disaster that was frankly unavoidable, or could something have been done to prevent such tragedy?
It's a very complex situation with many causes, but the thing that we're most concerned about is that those children who are hungry and dying didn't contribute to the causes and need our help.
And what sort of help can we realistically offer them?
We need to get them food, that's the first thing, and UNICEF's particular role is to look after those children who are the most desperate, the most hungry, who need emergency therapeutic feeding to keep them alive. That's the thing that we're doing most.
So what you don't need is people to send food from their own cupboards. You want money so that you can buy the right sort of food.
Yes, these children are so hungry that they can't absorb ordinary food. They need specialist care.
So what kind of things then would you then be providing?
We provide special supplementary feeding supplies, which include oil and grain and so on, mixed together in a food which is able to be absorbed by severely malnourished children. And we're providing also preventive measures, health care, school feeding, to try to keep children in school, to protect them from becoming victims of exploitation and child labour.
even if you can get them this special food that they need, presumably for many, many thousands, it's still going to be too late.
Well, many have died already, and many we saw while we were in Malawi last week in hospital in a very serious condition. But we are very concerned, as Martin Bell was explaining, that over the next months the small harvest which has just been brought in will run out and people won't have any food. And by September, October this year, if we don't get a lot of help to these people very quickly, the situation is going to be very dire.
Okay, David, thank you very much indeed. Well, if you'd like more information about the crisis in Malawi, you can contact UNICEF on 0870 606 3377. That's 0870 606 3377. Or if you're on the net, you can go to www.unicef.org.uk. The parents of the missing schoolgirl Amanda Dowler have released more home video of their daughter today, her 14th birthday. They're hoping it'll finally prompt someone who knows something about her disappearance to come forward. Keith Doyle is at Walton train station in Surrey, where Millie was last seen. Keith, they've been told to expect the worst, but Millie's parents still aren't entirely giving up hope, are they?
Well, it's March the 21st since Millie was last seen. She was last seen here at Walton-upon-Thames train station. And yes, her parents have been, are saying that they are holding out, but detectives do think now that they're quite pessimistic about Millie ever being found alive. Her parents have released a video taken last year when they were on holidays in Mexico. They now have very little to cling to, but they do hope that this video will make someone come forward to give that little bit of information which will help them put them out of their deep pain, which must be intolerable at the moment, particularly today on the day of her 14th birthday.
There doesn't seem to be much evidence that the police have many leads at all, does there?
No, 3 months on and not many leads. They have released more still pictures of Millie. They hope that this again will make someone come forward. A man was arrested a week ago and questioned. He was released on police bail. And last week, dozens of detectives and even members of the FBI got together to discuss this case to see if they've missed anything. But as yet, there's no real leads and they don't seem to be any further forward.
Okay, thanks. Well, Millie's mum, Sally, says that every day she still sends a text message to her missing daughter, and every day she waits for a reply that never comes. Joining me now in the studio is psychologist Dr. James Thompson. How on earth do Millie's parents, or any parents in this situation, try to cope with the agony that they're obviously enduring, and particularly the agony of just not knowing?
Not knowing is the hardest. I think as human beings we can cope with all sorts of dreadful things, but uncertainty is almost impossible. So I'd understand the parents still trying to keep contact, hoping against hope. Eventually, I suppose, someone, some friends, people they trust in their community, people they know, have got to say, we now have to make a change for the sake of you and the family. We have to accept this current awful situation and make sort of an emotional change which says we have to accept the unlikelihood that she'll be coming back in the near future, and that's very hard.
So the friends of the family have to stop sending the birthday cards, the mother has to stop sending the text messages?
Eventually, at a time in which the parents are ready and the family is ready, one probably has to have something which shows even grudging acceptance of this dreadful event. But that's very hard, and that's something which the parents will come to terms in their own time.
And the fact is that quite often people who go missing are never found, dead or alive.
Absolutely, so that always in one's mind one keeps a light burning. There could be an incredible chance, and that makes it very hard for the parents and the family and all the friends to adjust to that change.
Because we don't have to forget that Millie has an older sister who must have all kinds of mixed up feelings going on in her head, I would imagine.
Yes, everyone who's got someone missing wonders what they could have done to prevent it, wonders hope against hope if there's some explanation which would bring her back. Eventually, at a time with the correct support, people have to say, we understand now that we have to make a change in our lives for everyone's sake. But that's a hard decision to make.
Dr. Thompson, thank you very much indeed. More stories on the move this lunchtime. The jury is expected to go out today to consider the murder of Mandy Power and her family. She was found bludgeoned to death at her home in Swansea along with her mother and 2 daughters. David Morris denies 4 counts of murder. Talks about the closure of the Songat refugee camp are top of the agenda for the Home Secretary David Blunkett's meeting with his French counterpart today. They'll also be discussing tighter security at Dover and a deal to send illegal immigrants back to France. But it's expected the French government will want the UK to take in hundreds of the asylum seekers now in Songat. The government's considering hiring private health workers from abroad to cut the pressure on the NHS. It's an extension of the policy of using the private sector to help reduce waiting lists for minor operations. The Health Secretary is meeting foreign companies interested in providing services for the NHS. Battery chicken farming could be banned completely under new plans from the government. The public will be consulted about proposals to outlaw all cages. Instead, free-range hens would be able to roam around as much as they like. EU laws already mean the smallest cages will have to be banned within 10 years, but the Agriculture Minister, Elliot Morley, wants to go even further by banning bigger, so-called enriched cages. Rob Smith has the story.
More than 20 million hens are kept in battery cages in Britain, laying nearly 3/4 of all the eggs we eat. Concerns about the birds' welfare in cramped conditions has persuaded the EU to ban the smallest so-called barren cages. Instead, the only ones which will be legal in 10 years from now will give hens more space as well as a nesting box and perch. But the government here isn't convinced the bigger cages are better, and it's considering a ban on all battery egg farming. Farmers' leaders are unimpressed.
Government must not tell us what to do. We react to the consumer. If the consumer insists that everything should be free range, then we'll supply that.
Switching to completely free-range production is expensive, and farmers obviously don't want to spend more money than they have to. But egg producers argue they're not just looking at their bank balance. They're worried if Britain does away with cages altogether, other countries will still send us battery eggs produced in poor conditions.
The danger is, of course, is that the low-cost eggs, which are so demanded by 70% of consumers in this country at the present moment in time, will simply come from those other European countries, and nobody wins. Consumers don't win, and of course producers don't win.
With shoppers helping the government decide, it may be a choice between cheap and well-produced. Rob Smith, 5 News.
We're going to take a short break right now, but still ahead this lunchtime, anger after President Bush tells the Palestinians to ditch Yasser Arafat. And football fever in South Korea as the Minnows prepare to challenge Germany for the World Cup final. Plus, of course, we'll have today's weather prospects. That's 5 News after the break. This is 5 News. It's 12:15. Welcome back. Palestinians have reacted angrily to President Bush's statement that a solution to the Middle East crisis was possible only if Yasser Arafat were replaced as leader of the PLO. There's certainly no end in sight to the violence yet. The Israeli stranglehold on the West Bank is continuing in retaliation for a spate of suicide bombings. Today, 4 police officers were killed as Israeli troops stormed the Palestinian headquarters. James Bays reports.
This morning, the Israelis moved into Hebron, the 7th Palestinian town or city to be reoccupied. They blew up a building they say was being used as a bomb factory. In heavy fighting, 4 Palestinian policemen were killed by Israeli forces. These scenes are depressingly familiar, but they come just hours after a major development on the diplomatic front. For nearly a decade, the US government had seen Yasser Arafat as the only Palestinian leader worth dealing with. Not any longer. They're now urging the Palestinian people to replace President Arafat.
Peace requires a new and different Palestinian leadership so that a Palestinian state can be born.
The problem is it's highly unlikely the 73-year-old Palestinian leader will step down. He's always been a fighter. Even now, he almost always wears his guerrilla fatigues and a holster on his belt. He's led his people for more than 3 decades, despite being arrested in Egypt, exiled from Jordan, and nearly captured by the Israelis during the war in the Lebanon. Even if he did step down, there are few obvious successors. The Americans would like someone like Hanan Ashwari to take over. She's media-friendly and moderate, but has very little grassroots support. Another possible successor is Abu Ullah, the man who first started peace talks with the Israelis in Oslo. He underwent heart surgery in the last fortnight and is seriously ill. One man who does have a great deal of popular support is the West Bank leader Marwan Barghouti. However, to the Israelis and Americans, he's even more unacceptable than Mr. Arafat. He was arrested in April this year and is now in an Israeli prison. The real fear is that if Yasser Arafat is not in charge, these men will be. Hamas are behind many of the suicide bombings in Israeli towns and cities. Their support in the Gaza Strip and West Bank appears now to be growing. James Bayes, 5 News.
The leaders of the world's 8 leading industrial nations are setting off for Canada today, ready for the G8 summit, which starts tomorrow. It's being held in the Rocky Mountains, where, as Colin Campbell now reports, security measures are taking on a rather unusual twist.
Laser-guided anti-aircraft missiles are trained on the skies. A no-fly zone is in place. It's Canada's largest peacetime security operation. Safety precautions for world leaders arriving at the G8 summit in the Canadian Rockies. Police are also on alert to counter rioting from anti-globalization protesters. But authorities planning security at the conference are facing a very different problem: grizzly bears. An army of scientists have been recruited to keep the animals that roam the wilderness surrounding the venue out of harm's way.
The G8 asked us to come to try to make sure that the bears don't get into trouble. Bark at the bear! Bark at the bear!
And this is how they'll do it, frightening them off into the woods with packs of dogs. If it doesn't work, the grizzlies will be scared off by harmless rubber bullets fired at their backsides. Scientists argue the precautions aren't just measures to safeguard humans, reducing a bush or bear encounter with a grizzly, more a case of protecting wild endangered animals from the public. Colin Campbell, 5 News.
The World Cup underdogs South Korea are about to step out against Germany to decide who goes through to the final. And despite Germany's reputation as a footballing superpower, many are now speculating that the unthinkable could happen. And South Korea could pull off the biggest upset in a tournament of upsets. Andy Richardson reports.
Of Seoul has turned red today as hundreds of thousands of fans converge in front of big screens ahead of the semi-final against Germany. It's estimated that 7 million fans will take to the streets across the country to watch a game that was inconceivable just a few weeks ago. South Korean fans have been among the star performers at this World Cup. That their team's success has so far equalled their level of support has been a source of immense surprise and scepticism from certain quarters. Gus Hiddink's side have certainly benefited from some poor refereeing in their games against Italy and Spain, but the manager has done his best not to allow any talk of a conspiracy to overshadow his team's achievement.
So, on this semi-final, which is a big unexpected achievement for Korean players and Korean football, I will remind them, if necessary, once more why. And we go, like I said before, like young dogs to approach this game again.
As for their opponents, even German legend Franz Beckenbauer says the team have been lucky to get this far, but luck may be just what Germany needs if they're to halt the co-host today. Meanwhile, South Korean soldiers will blast live radio commentary of the game across the demilitarised zone to North Korea. This is one party that definitely looks set to disturb the neighbours. Andy Richardson, 5 News.
Day 2 of the greatest tennis show on earth gets underway in a little bit over an hour's time. Tim Henman begins his Wimbledon campaign against the Frenchman Jean-François Bachelot. Henman has been made the tournament favourite by at least one bookmaker, so the pressure is certainly on the British number 1. Jane O'Donoghue is a name you're unlikely to have heard of, but she is 19 years old, she's British, and she plays two-time Wimbledon champion Venus Williams on centre court today. O'Donoghue is making her Wimbledon debut. And the top stories on this Tuesday's 5 News at noon. The famine in Malawi is now so serious that people there have to dig holes in the ground to hunt for mice to eat. 3 million people face starvation and death in the African country unless aid arrives soon. The children's charity UNICEF is trying to help the relief effort there. Malawians told volunteers to tell their people here that Malawi was starving. If you want to contact them or to offer some help, you can call 0870 606 3377 or visit the website www.unicef.org.uk. On the 14th birthday of the missing teenager Amanda Dowler, her family has released more home video of her in the hope it'll prompt someone to come forward with news of where she could possibly be. Her mum is still sending text messages to her mobile phone. And the government is asking the public to decide whether it should put a complete ban on battery chicken farming. People will be asked to vote on whether the hens should be allowed to roam free instead of being held in cages. And that's it from me for the moment. I'll be back again at 1 o'clock. And don't forget, Kirsty Young is here twice this evening at 5:30, and then to talk about the views behind the news at 7:30. Bye for now.
Channel 5 weather, sponsored by RAC Auto Windscreens. On call, whatever the weather. Whew.
Good afternoon. Well, another very bright and sunny day on the way for many parts of Great Britain. As you can see on the satellite picture here, not too much by the way of cloud around in the south. And as we cruise up towards the borders into the north of Scotland, the cloud kicks in from the Atlantic. That's where we're going to see most of the wet weather today. Now, as you can see, it's just sitting around in northwestern parts at the moment. Some of those showers could be rather heavy up until the evening. Across the rest of the country, though, plenty of cloud, but a good deal of sunny spells are going to manage to break their way through. Temperatures aren't too bad at all. 18 in the north, that's round about the seasonal average. And then as we come into the south, anything up to the low 70s, which is about 22. Now, as we go into tonight, the picture changing again. We've still got that rain sticking around in the northwest, those showers getting a little heavier. And as you can see, also that chunky cloud moving into Northern Ireland. Everywhere else, though, a relatively even cloud cover. Now, that's going to keep those temperatures nicely pegged up. So in the north, anything up to 10. In the south, 10 or 11. Not too much difference. Now, here's a look at the outlook for the rest of the day. Sunny spells just about everywhere, except for in the north.
Channel 5 weather, sponsored by RAC Auto Windscreens. On call, whatever the weather.